Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board. Today, I am joined by Tammy Barlette. She is a retired Air Force pilot. Tammy, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm interested to hear about your military experience and then your work at Athena's Voice. So before we get too far into the conversation, can you tell us about your military service?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan, and thanks for having me. I started out actually in Air Force ROTC at the University of Minnesota. I graduated from there and went to pilot training at Laughlin. After I graduated pilot training, I was immediately assigned as an instructor pilot in the T-37, which is the Air Force's basic trainer. And I did that for about 3.5 years. And then I moved on to fly the A-10. I went through training in Tucson, and then I had an assignment in Korea, and then I went back to Tucson at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. At which point I had cervical spine reconstruction, so I separated from active duty, but I went active in the Guard for the Arizona Guard, where I flew the Predator. And then during that time, I went to weapons school, flying both the Predator and the Reaper. And after that, I moved on and finished full-time in the reserves, flying the T-38 back right where I started at Laughlin Air Force Base in Del Rio, Texas.
And so how long did your career expand for? How long were you in?
I was in for 20 years.
I'm interested to know the lessons that you learned in terms of service and leadership, how you use those lessons today with Athena's Voice. Can you tell us about their mission and how you became involved with them?
Yeah, so Athena's Voice was started, and I'll be honest and give credit to my husband to start that, really, because he looked at me and said to me, I know what you're going to do when you retire. And I was very curious to hear what he had to say. And when he initially told me speaking, I thought he was insane. And I really did.
Does he typically give you advice on things like this, or was this kind of out of the blue?
No, he does. Yeah, he does. But I was kind of caught off guard because I didn't expect that. And all I could think of is that stress and nerves that happen before you get up on stage. I mean,
Yeah.
In the military, especially being a pilot, you're asked to speak a lot. And then as your career becomes more unique, you're asked to speak even more. And although it was always nerve-wracking, I realized over the next few years after he had said that it was a way to give something that I couldn't give any other way. So I started doing some research and reaching out to people who I knew who were speakers, specifically Heather Lucky Penny, because she's been speaking for several years. And her and I talked, and we instantly clicked because we had met over the internet. We'd known each other for years, but in person, we started having this conversation about speaking. And she just said, we need more women out there. Let's start a business. Let's get ladies out there. I mean, we started with female fighter pilots. The goal is to have women veterans, all ranks, all services. But at this point, we're still pretty much a startup. So we started with 12 female fighter pilots. We recruited them, and we've been in business a little over 2 years now. So just the vision, ultimately, the vision was really to get, women's leadership and life perspective out there, because there's men out there speaking to both men and women on stages everywhere. And we need more women out there doing the same exact thing. Now, obviously, there's going to be other impact. Like, for example, we know we'll have a big impact on women in general, and then young girls and women that look up to us. They need more role models, because truly there is something to seeing is believing. So,
what's the impact been when you go to audiences, when you're speaking to businesses, or when you're talking with young women who are starting their careers off? What is the environment like? What are the conversations that you're having? What are they like?
At first, it always seems to be a little bit of kind of awe. Wow, look what you did. That's amazing. But the truth is that we just chose a different path. There's amazing people everywhere, and they just need to realize that. So what we try and do is we take our stories of lessons we have learned and bring them to light in a way that people can go, oh, I can relate to that. Yeah. And that's the point. It's not about talking about our lives and our stories. It's about saying, hey, this lesson I learned is applicable to you all. And it's amazing, really, in the corporate world, how much stories are relevant and applicable in the business world, war stories, combat, and, it's an environment, fighting to be the best you can be.
Yeah, do you think, like you said, maybe initially the conversations take a little bit of time, but have you learned how to bridge the conversation gap between the veterans that you speak with at Athena's Voice and then maybe some of your non-service peers, and how that's received?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, and I think it really has to do with bringing out the whole story, not just telling the story on, the top level, but bringing the emotion of the experiences out and sharing that piece with people so they can realize that we're human. I'm not saying I'm not human, but we get a lot of people that are like, wow, look what you did. And I'm like, you could have done it too. Like I said, it's just a different path. And once people can see that we're just like everybody else and things impact us significantly. For example, one comment I always get when people find out that I've struggled with confidence is, what? But you're a fighter pilot. I'm like, I know, but I'm human,
Yeah, it's an interesting the ability to be able to teach the lessons that you learned in the military and then bring them into the boardroom or bring them into the workplace or bring them into the corporate environment, I think is something that veterans really have, an opportunity to continue to serve and continue to lead after the military. And one way that you do that with Athena's Voice is through the concept of social courage. So when you were talking about, people go, wait, how is somebody like you with your extensive military career, how do you overcome nerves, or how did you gain the confidence that you have? What do you tell them about that? Was it just simply practice and getting up in front of people or talking or flying aircraft? Or is there something that you provide the audience to say, hey, when I was nervous, when I lacked confidence, these are the paths or these are the steps that I took to overcome that?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it starts with, figuring out who you are and what path you want to walk on. And once you determine that path, that it's yours, and you need to go that way or blaze a trail, maybe that it's, it lines up with what you want to do in life, then you decide, I'm not going to quit no matter how difficult this gets. One of my mottos is, when quitting is not an option, you will find another way. So don't let it be an option. So I think the baseline has to start off with determining this is your path and then going, I will not quit. I think that's a lot of the reason I have succeeded and grown as a person, because in the military, there's so many times you cannot quit. There is no option. You must go on. And that brings out something in you that doesn't come out if you can go, well, this is a little uncomfortable. I think I'm going to stop. So I think that's the first step, is being willing to just, because I would say outside the military where you have all these options to quit, it's harder actually, because you have to choose to step out of your comfort zone. That's a choice you're making now. You're not getting shoved out. The military is not shoving you out. You're going, okay, I'm going to go do this scary thing. So it takes a little bit more bravery. So once you get out there, then, now it's just a matter of just trying to look around your environment and go, I'm going to keep going no matter what, even if I'm nervous, even if I'm scared, because that's what's going to make me better. And, it's tough, because I think with a social courage aspect, I talk about how a person can be very courageous when it comes to like physical danger, but there's more to courage than that. It talks about overcoming fear and anxiety, and, that's not limited to just, having your physical body in danger. Social situations are very fear. It causes a lot of fear in people, especially in the work environment when you're trying to prove yourself. We oftentimes become somebody we are really not, or we don't ask the questions we need to ask. And early on in pilot training, I would say almost all of pilot training, I didn't ask questions when I knew I had them, because I thought I was the only one who didn't know. I was surrounded by mostly men who had engineering degrees, and here I was coming from the University of Minnesota with a degree in gerontology. Now that is the social and psychological study of aging. What was I doing there? I wanted to be there, and so I did it. And I didn't fit in very well when it comes to like my degree background, but that doesn't matter. It really didn't, but I didn't know that in the beginning. And so I would sit quietly in class, not ask my questions, and try and figure it out later. Well, later in life, when I went to weapons school, I knew that wasn't going to cut it. That was absolutely not going to cut it. So I made this pact with myself that if I had a question, I was going to raise my hand and ask it. And that's just one example of social courage. And it was really hard the first time. I was like, okay, here's the first question. I'm just going to go show everybody how much I don't know. I raised my hand, I asked the question, and I kept asking them, just kept doing it. And it was funny because almost every day after class, somebody came up to me and they would say, I'm so glad you asked that question. I was wondering the same thing, and I just realized people are just not speaking up. So that's the biggest thing I have from the individual perspective. When you're wondering something or you're not sure, you have an idea, be brave and courageous enough to speak up and ask or share your idea. And don't worry so much about what everybody else might think. Because even if somebody is thinking what you're going to, it's probably just one in the crowd. And the rest of them are like, oh, wow, that person, he or she spoke up. That's awesome. So.
Did you find yourself actually becoming more confident because you asked questions?
I did. Yeah, it was very helpful. And it was interesting because I think other people now put a little bit more trust in you because they know you're being like raw, real. Hey, I don't get this, so, and if you know something, you're going to tell them that. So if they had a question, they would come to me because they knew I wasn't going to make up some answer, because that's quite common. I'm not saying make up an answer, but a lot of people guess their best guess with confidence, and you put faith in that, and then it's not right. And that can be scary.
Yeah, when you go to talk with these groups and you have an opportunity to talk with leadership in a business or the settings that you're in, how do you either encourage or do you discuss with the leadership on teams to make sure that the environments that they're setting for their staff or in their business facilitates the ability for their junior employees or junior airmen or whoever it may be to ask questions and put them in a setting where they feel comfortable trying to get answers to things that they may not want to ask?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important. And this is the other aspect of it, because I think that social courage, it's kind of like muscles. Everybody has a limit. Like, you could probably lift a lot more weight than I could, right? So, I would need help lifting a 300-pound, barbell. So and what I'm getting at is that social courage, I believe, is the same way. We're all given a certain amount that we can stretch and improve. But, some people are just like, I'm not going to stand up in front of a crowd and ask a question. But there's other ways. But the idea is that we can push people to continue to be courageous and ask their questions and speak out, and that's important. But we, instead of just putting it all on our team, on our people, we can meet them and make the environment more friendly for that. Because I've been in so many environments where it was clear people would say, "Oh, ask any question you want. There's no dumb question." Haha. There is dumb questions, actually. That was how that would run. And people were, it wasn't just me. I know that I wasn't the only one that was like, I'm not asking a question. Because even though the environment.
Yeah, and they don't want to get smacked, especially I think it's an interesting dynamic, right? Where if you're a fighter pilot or if you're somebody who's rising through the ranks in corporate America, if you're considered to be the expert, actually the best way to be an expert is to ask questions. And almost the worst way to be an expert is to really kind of bottle it up. And that's a little bit about what you were dealing with, right? Is how I know that there are things that I need to learn and I'm not sure how to ask them.
Yeah. And so what do you're kind of getting at, what do you do? What advice would I give? And the truth is that we have to find a way to remove judgment, because that's, I think, the biggest fear in people's hesitation to ask questions, offer up new ideas. They're fearful of the judgment. And yeah, we can tell people to tough it out, suck it up, just speak up anyways. But you know what? A lot of people aren't going to. So let's meet them. And how do we do that? How do we remove the judgment? Well, a lot of times we're judging people without even realizing it. So the first thing I always say is encourage questions and new ideas. But wait, there's more, because I think most people are doing that. That part they're doing. But you have to pay attention to your response. Not only your facial expressions, like, are you looking at when they, are you doing this? Or is your body not, those are important. But your words, I'll give you an example. So if somebody asks a question, I always encourage people to not say, oh, it's simple, just fill in the blank. Because although we feel like we're making them, it's easing their mind because this concept isn't really that complicated, in actuality, they might feel a little incompetent because now we just said, well, this concept's easy and you don't get it. So, what else would they feel, right? So, and sometimes it's just our words too, little things like, I can't believe you don't know. That's always meant very innocently, but it doesn't feel like it on the other side. You're like, wait, I was supposed to know that? I must be. Or just something as simple as, everybody knows. Oh crap, I'm the one who doesn't know. How dumb do I feel right now? It's just trying to help that inner dialogue in people's minds. Give grace. Like, that's one thing I end with that. Just give people grace. Start with yourself, because if you really analyze your own words and the communication that's happening in your environment, you will find that there is a lot of judgment, especially behind people's backs. We tell third graders not to do it, but yet we do it all the time and we think it's okay. But if we pay attention to the communication, we'll actually recognize we're doing it a lot. And at first you might feel a little bit of shame, like, wow, I can't believe I'm talking about that person like that. I shouldn't do this. But so give grace to yourself and then apply that to your teams.
I'm interested to know how your own thought process about social courage has changed from the time that your husband recommended you pursue a career after the military in public speaking to, the conversation that we're having now, because I'm guessing that you've been in front of many different crowds. You had the opportunity to interact with tons of men and women over the last couple of years, and your maybe ideas or understanding of social courage, has it changed? Has it progressed? And I'm interested to know also, have you become more confident in speaking about those changes and adding new things to your speech?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely has morphed. I think that it first came about, they say that people talk about things that they struggle with, and they give advice to people on things they struggle with because they've been through that. And absolutely, I struggled with confidence. I struggled with what I call social courage, because I'm like, wait, I'm courageous, but not in this way. And that's why I labeled it specifically social courage. And it was very frustrating to me because I know from the instructor pilot's perspective, which I instructed for many years, looking at a student who answers without confidence, you're like, wait, dude, just answer with confidence. But the truth is that I felt, and it wasn't until I realized that when I was sitting on the other side of the table as a student, that if I said something confidently that I wasn't actually confident about, I felt like almost like I was lying. It was very inauthentic. Once I identified that that was the problem, it became easier for me to really go, okay, I can act confidently, and that's not lying, Tammy. It's not lying, because I'm a very transparent person, probably almost too much so in some people's opinions. Yeah, well, what do you do? And so I struggled with that, and I wanted to be real all the time. And so bringing that into play and recognizing that I wasn't lying was a step. But as far as after that happened in the military, as far as like after the military and with the speaking thing, I've definitely realized that it comes down to judgment. And it really bothered me that my whole life struggled to get over what people said. What are people going to think? I know in my mind, I'm not supposed to worry about that. But I think the truth is that most of us still do. It's just part of how we're wired. Some people more so than others. So I'm going to still keep working on it, but how can somebody meet me? Because it wasn't until later in my career when I was in a squadron that I felt like I was really met in the middle. Like, hey, yeah, just tell us your ideas, make your mistakes. We'll get through this. I learned and I grew, and I really came into myself, if you will. And it was such a significant change. And I just want to continue that after the military and share that with others. Like, how did I get there?
So I'm interested to know what you've learned from the other women on Athena's Voice, and if you guys ever have kind of times where you're able to share ideas or talk about either your experiences in the military or what you guys get up on stage to talk about.
Yes. One thing that's helped me with being so close to the other ladies is that I've learned it's just been reiterated in my mind that I'm not the only one. And if I'm experiencing this and they're experiencing this lack of confidence, we know that a significant portion of the world is probably experiencing the same thing, and they could use the advice and how we got through it, because that's the thing that people always want to know. Well, if you're just like us, how did you do it anyways? What did you do? And so a lot of people, a lot of the ladies will talk about being vulnerable, and how much courage and strength and leadership it takes to be vulnerable. And, some of the ladies talk about just, being authentic and embracing suffering. There's just different topics that, they talk about, and a lot of them are very similar, but they're always different, because we bring in real stories to share and make people connect emotionally with what it is we're experiencing, so they can walk away and go, I can do something about this too.
I'm guessing that your speaking opportunities, have changed a little bit, just as everyone's flow of life has changed in a work from home environment. So I'm interested to know how you're keeping in touch with folks on your team, and kind of how you have approached social courage during a work from home environment.
Yeah. So being at home has been challenging. Specifically, I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing the same thing I am, running a business from home with 3 kids who had to be schooled and still trying to take care of the house, because that's essentially, I'm retired, right? And that's what I'm doing now, and I love it. It was challenging, and all of us are having that challenge, right? So as far as Athena's Voice specifically, we pivoted and really brought our social media marketing out more so. So initially we did a 19-day campaign where we were doing like a crisis series, and each of the ladies were doing a 2 to 4 minute video daily on something that they think they could help just people in general deal with crisis. Because in the military, we deal with a lot of crisis, right? We deal with a lot of things that need to be handled and done, and the one thing that people were saying is that the medical professionals are like the front lines. And I thought, front lines, that's like war. And how can we help them? What can we do? Because we've dealt with that. So that's what we did. And we've kept the video series going. As far as the team goes, we've had a Zoom happy hour once a month. So, and that's really just to chat, like no business. We're just going to like hang out and have a good time, and just stories are going to come up. And as far as the social courage goes, I think the biggest thing that applies for me is really implementing the whole idea of go with the 80% solution. So a lot of times they wait for 100%, right? They're waiting for it to be perfect. And I've known that my entire life. We've said that, I don't know if it's a flying or a military saying, but go with 80% solution, because you'll never go if you wait for 100%, because you can always fix things later. And I think this is really the first time I've put it into play aggressively and said, okay, this isn't perfect. That video record is not perfect, but I'm human and everyone else is, and we're just going to go. We're just going to do this. So I think that's been helpful. And I think that takes social courage, because you're putting yourself out there to the world, and here's my video, and, here's my background, and hope my lighting looks okay, or whatever I don't know.
Yeah, it's that. I think that is a tremendous part, if not the majority of the experience too, after leaving the military, is you start doing so many things that are just different from what your primary responsibilities and skills were for you for 20 years. And yeah. I'm interested to know, do you enjoy life after the military? Even though I think it's fun to learn new things. It can be a little nerve-wracking at times, but how has your experience been transitioning out of the military?
I've really enjoyed it. I love flying, especially formation, so I miss that. I love teaching, but teaching comes in all sorts of sizes and shapes, right? It doesn't just have to be flying. So that's been great to be able to still teach in this sort. And the other thing I've learned, though, is just, like I said, the whole 80% solution, just go for it. There are so many things that I don't know. I can't wait for the perfection. I just have to go with it. And it's interesting because here I am running a business, and I flew planes for 20 years. That's really all I did. And I thought, man, there was part of me that was doubtful. I can't do this. But I quieted that voice and said, you know what? I can. You can't let that voice have control. You have to go, you can do it. And so even though I knew there was a lot of things that were going to be hard lessons learned, there have been, whether it's the accountant or working with a lawyer. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I needed that. Well, I think there was somebody said to me something about scaling, and I'm like, what is scaling? That was one of those questions I didn't want to ask, because I thought, clearly everybody around me knows what this is, because I was in a setting that was outside the military, in a business environment. I'm like, scaling? What is scaling? And obviously I figured it out, and there's hopes that we will scale in the future ourselves, but it's stuff like that catches you off guard, and you go, nope, I'm not quitting. I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to go ask questions to the right people.
So I'm interested to know how you personally, have you changed your approach or the way that you practice or prepare a speech?
Yes. At the end of my military career, I felt confident that I could speak. And I think I'm not going to expand beyond this, because I was exposed to pilots. Most pilots can speak. That's what we do. We brief daily. And it may not be the kind of speaking we think of on stage, but you're thrown in these situations where you just have to go do it. You figure it out. So I felt confident, but then I went through some training at a place called Heroic Public Speaking, and it completely changed how I approach speaking. Because, even though I knew it was never about my story, I didn't know how to take my story and bring it out in a way that it was interesting and gripping to the audience, but led to a lesson that they could walk away with. Because I love great stories too, but I want to walk away going, oh yeah, I can use that. That's helpful. And that's the point. We're not up on stage to share stories. In fact, part of my hesitation when my husband mentioned this to me is that I don't want to do that. And I think a lot of women are like that, which I think is why a lot of women aren't sharing their stories and getting it out, and a lot of things haven't changed. I mean, many people don't even know about the WASPs. They flew in World War II, all the planes. And if they had gotten out and shared their stories, our experiences might have been different. So I think it's important. I think about, let's say you're set to walk across, through a forest, right? And you have from sun up to sunset to walk through this forest. Now, if you don't see another path, you're going to make your own, and you're going to do the best that you possibly can. So what we're trying to do is show other people behind us that there's already a path. We've gone down it a little bit, so take that and then keep going, so that we don't get all stuck at the same spot. Like, let's continue off where the last person left. So.
No, that's awesome. So where can we go if the audience is, for those listening at home or watching on our social media channels, and they want to learn about some of these experiences and follow the path that you all have set out at Athena's Voice? You talked about some of the crisis management videos that had been produced by your team as well. And I know there's just a wealth of knowledge about personal and professional development, as well as your military experiences. So where can we follow Athena's Voice?
Yeah, people are really liking those because they're short. So the best place to see all of the videos is on our YouTube channel, Athena's Voice. And they're all categorized by, the speaker and stuff like that. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. It's all Athena's Voice USA. And our website is athenasvoiceusa.com.
Well, Tammy, before we go, I want to give you the last word. Is there anything else that we didn't get to talk about today that you would like to address with our audience?
The only thing I want to say is just, I think most people, and you asked about my speakers and what I've learned from them, is one of the things I've discovered is that many of us feel like it took us a long time to really find our true, authentic self, and is always there. If we look back, we can see glimpses of it. So I just want to encourage people to try and pick up on those little glimpses early on and go with that gut. You go with that gut and heart of where you should go, where you should be, and not where everyone else thinks you should be. I think so many of us try to achieve what others think we should do. And you really, until you follow your own heart and where you should go, I don't think you're going to find that path that makes you have, peace and contentment and happiness, truly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for Tammy for being on the show with us today. And I really, I think one thing that's really going to stick with me is the analogy that you used about walking through the forest. And if you're the first one to go through it, make sure that you walk through it and then leave a path for others to come behind you. So thank you, as well as all the other women at Athena's Voice, for taking the lead at that and really setting out the path for young women and men as well as they come up through their careers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan.
On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board, I am your host, Dan Hamilton. Thank you once again for joining us here at the Next Gen Warrior Show. If you have a chance, please give us a like, a share, a comment, and help spread the great stories of success like Tammy and those at Athena's Voice. We will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior Podcast.